want to have the panel that we are having today is the first panel is actually pretty much the theme of this summit, what we call as the future of banking. And the topic we actually are talking here is about what is a business leader's strategic perspective on what we see as the future of banking, or let's say a future-ready bank. I do want to invite my fellow panelists on stage. So may I invite my first panelist, who's Managing Director, is the APAC Head of Ops and Technology for Payments at JPMorgan Chase. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together to welcome Shrinath Bolloju. My other panelist today is the Global Head of CRM and Sales Enablement at Standard Chartered. Please put your hand together to welcome Daniel Hinds. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Shrinath, for being here. I do have a set of questions for you, but I just want to actually start with something which is more fundamental. And can we just quickly ask you, future of banking, if there is one line that describes that, what would that be for you?
Let's go first. Change, constant change.
Change. All right, and you, Srinath?
I would agree with that. I'd also add future in many ways is probably yesterday. So.
Future is yesterday. Oh, lovely. That's, I think you can smell the coffee now. Future was yesterday. Okay. I think that's a very important takeaway for our discussion today. Well, okay. I'm going to have the first, we're going to have this in maybe 2 rounds. And the first round is actually about what is strategy and what does it mean for banks, right? And I probably will maybe ask you, I think, Chetan just talked about, there was a very nice question we had from Balaji that was talking about fintechs and what fintechs mean, and there was a discussion about B2C and B2B and licenses and everything else, right? But here's my question to you. Do you see, do you really see fintechs bringing in innovation? And if so, what kind of shift do you see global banks actually are getting to be impacted by thanks to fintechs?
It's a good question. A lot to unpack there, but you think what fintech brings from innovation standpoint. I'm a former Navy guy, so I'll kind of use this in some analogies I can probably relate to myself and try to explain it. So you think about fintechs and innovation that's out there. They're the destroyers out in the fleet. They're quick, they're nimble, they pack a punch, they provide something that's very relevant across the board. Conversely, if you think about an aircraft carrier, slow, but it's movable, but it's got a lot of capability and assets on board the aircraft. They can go far, fast, and reach a lot of different areas. And they need to be stable, and they provide a lot of difference from a battle perspective, right? So what happens here is that, in essence, the destroyers are out there innovating and think, oh, that's great. They can defend the carrier or the group, but the bank and with the banking committee, the carrier, they can bring that in and say, I want this asset, I want this capability, I want this, I want that. To be able to translate that, what does it mean from your client or your bank or your from a consumer standpoint? So, and we have to be stable, but be able to deliver capable product over and over again because the risk profile is a little bit different, right? And looking at a bunch of bankers in the room, while I understand and appreciate the product and everything we do day in, day out, I just do also know what happens in the community and what's happening out just in the industry itself. So we have to evolve, we have to be able to enhance ourselves with capabilities to defend and help our clients. At the same time, you all are being inundated with data and also being inundated with all the different products out there. What are you guys looking at all that? How do you look at that? What are you going to drive your insights? Where are you actually going to provide your next idea to your client, or how are you going to drive something different? And you're all inundated with that, so how does all this information come in? And then how do we really start distilling down and say, hey, what is that? What's the insight? Where's the gap? Where's your products? Where's your soft spot in your position with your client? And it's either from digital banking, API data, whatever we just talked about, it's all in there. And Pat resonated, his points resonated with me. It's like, yeah, it's like slow, and all of a sudden it's boom, because next thing you know, every single banker I deal with in Stand Chart, oh my God, I'm already behind, I'm behind. I need data, I need this, where's my insights, right? So fintechs bring a lot of good information. Now it's just more how do banks really get quicker distill it to move faster because, especially big banks are notoriously just slow. And it's very hard to move that big ship to get going. So being able to accelerate that faster, get the information faster, provides you the tools and insights on the go so you can really see what is that, what is it that we're looking for? How does the AI and all the technologies that we've given to you, when you have agentics and all the agents going on that and trusting that, so the information you have can actually really support you like you're doing for clients. So going forward, like I said, change, that's the only change you're going to now because now it's here, right? So we have to be able to adapt, flexible, and have speed to market to make sure we're making a difference.
Wow. You got to be flexible, and change is already here. The future is already past, and change is already here. I love these takeaways of this session already, aren't you? I think there were two very interesting points you made, Daniel. One was about being agile and being fast and being and global, and especially when you're dealing with large banks. Of course, the second was about change is already here. And I want to take that to you, Shrinath, right? I mean, let's face it, end of the day, when we're dealing with large banks and especially when dealing with large cross-border transactions, and we're dealing with what would actually be scale of the size that Daniel talked about. I mean, he took the airline example. I mean, we're talking about scale. But inherent in it is that not only are we dealing with size, with agility, with speed, but we're also dealing with something that is invisible, something which is behind the scene, something which is not necessarily seen by the customer, but what's really keeping things move, right? And that's really where the game, the game changing is, right? I mean, how do you really differentiate between good and great, where you actually are doing a good job of laying the foundation? I mean, the gradual part before the sudden takes over. So if you could give me, your take on how technology and technology-enabled operations, in a strategic sense, is changing shape given this context.
Okay, let me try and lay out a few points. I mean, if I look at the payments business, right, this is probably one of the oldest service offerings from financial institutions and service providers for centuries. And if you look at the evolution over the last couple of decades, you will see that it's only technology which has made that push happen, right? The whole change which is coming through is because of the evolution of tech and the way it's being applied into the space and the difference that it makes. Now, there's a couple of things which I want to point out here, right? So, what tech has done is it's enabled all of these changes to come in. I mean, we talk about real-time payments. That's only because of the tech which is underpinning the infrastructure in the markets to enable this. We're talking about 24/7 access to payments for our customers. The whole concept, the old concept of a 9-to-5 business, I think is completely eliminated. I mean, you are just 24/7, and therefore as a service provider, you need to be available 24/7 for your customer to operate. But it's not just about having the service available, it's also about ensuring that you are operating at scale, you are operating with the minimum required security to keep your customer transactions secure, you are operating with resilience. Because there was a point which came up in one of the keynote addresses about resiliency, saying what happens if everything goes down? It's not unthinkable, but I think institutions or service providers have to plan for those eventualities. So again, this is something where I would say, as an organization offering such services to clients in the market, the focus completely changes. Yes, there is a tech layer which underpins the entire service offering, but there is now a completely new layer which comes on board to look at, okay, how do I ensure that there is a continuous service offering which is available to my client and which ensures that we stay invisible as far as the client is concerned. They just know that it's happening, that's it. They don't really care how and why. So that is where I think the service organization has to start reorienting its thought process. It's fascinating. One could argue, I mean, there is, I like to think of it as a situation where, you could kind of right or wrong that this is the path to take. But then when you start getting guided by what is right for the customer or the client, I think then the answer becomes a little more clear. So to me, it's really about focusing on eliminating the friction, using your technology to create that ambient payment processing happening in the background without any noise, and to ensure that fundamentally we continue to retain the trust. I mean, at the end of the day, a bank, financial service provider is in the business of trust. We can't forget that. And that's probably one area where I think the traditional finance organizations are maybe still a little bit different from the new age fintechs which are coming in, because that element of trust is in the DNA of these organizations. You cannot lose sight of that. That is the business that we are handling.
Well said. I think I want to come back to you on this, Srinath. I mean, you did talk about how you have to be engaging with the customer, keeping this, not losing sight of the customer and the trust that the customer places on the institution. But things are changing from what was 9 to 5 to what is 24/7. I'm probably going to come back to you on what that means as new operating models. But before I came to you on that, I'm going to go to Daniel with something even more fundamental. You see, the whole discussion today, we're talking about AI, and we had a very interesting comment from Pat about how AI is probably going to change the way those 6 use cases of money is, and what that could actually mean for the way we would be dealing with things. But as leaders, we also have another, should I say, challenge or opportunity, the way you look at it. And I'm sure this question is going to resonate with most people in the room here. What does all of this mean in terms of capabilities, human resources, skill sets, the kind of talent, the kind of grooming, the kind of human capital that one needs to build to be future ready? And are we ready today? Is there a direction that one should be investing in, and what is that direction?
That's a good question, thanks. It's definitely a journey. I think we're still in the beginning throes of, okay, it's here now, but what we look at from a banking point of view, and like the teams I deal with and who I deal with from the product teams and the sales teams, just stepping back, everywhere right now, it's an arms race to a certain extent. Everything, oh, get ahead, I need to know this. What's ChatGPT doing? What's Copilot doing? What's the tool doing? What's going on? And everybody's running around just trying to figure out, oh, do I need a prompt? Do I need an agent? And not everybody really understands all that in its own sense. There's a lot of unpacking each of those capabilities and what the technology and what this capability brings to bear, right? And even with in banking, back to your point around being safety, resiliency, and what we are today, we're definitely in a transition stage, be so for quite a while. I think in the next 12 to 18 months for teams and banks and just regulatory, just the group controls and everything that comes in unpacking technology inside the bank to then turn it into product to do whatever. It's just going to take a long time. And resources and budgets are finite in the group. So even with all the competitions that happens inside the banks and where we're going, we need to be very, very cognizant of, okay, well, back to people, are they really trained? We're talking about, are we going to release some agents out to customer service organization? Are you going to release an agent out to automate payments? What is that ramification? What does your client think about that? What they heard of that? There's a lot of different nuances and understandings that we need to be prepared for. We're just not there yet, and we'll continually need to be brought to the forefront, and where the fintech organizations or organizations like OpenAI or Microsoft, whoever's out there, is coming in and making sure they can educate our teams, educate what the capabilities are, what's the impact for what that goes out, and then that will slowly, I think, all of a sudden, take off, and you'll see a completely different shift in how we will operate with AI, and the teams will then kind of right-size itself. So if you think about the people, either you're going to rise and get understanding of what you're doing from your training and understand what you do with it, or you don't, you'll be left behind because the teams will evolve, and then you have to have teams of 100, teams of 5, I don't know, and then everything else is agents. I mean, these are things that still need to be contemplated and kind of hashed out from a broader banking and big, where I sit today, corporate banking, is like, how do you really think about that? And when do we do that? And going back to my original comment saying, all of us from banking perspective, all you sales teams, what are you doing with all this? How do you need agents? How do you need AI? What is it doing for you when you're looking at cross-border? What's your ability to take market share? What are you looking at from the insights from all the information we're talking what are you doing to make sure you resonate and you have that latest piece of intel that makes a difference when you have that conversation with your client, because you've already got the payments, you've already got the platforms, but what is it you know that someone else doesn't know about what either HSBC is doing at Stanchart, or Bank of America is doing at JPMorgan, or what does that mean for the products and what you're doing that? So it's all about your relationships that you have, but you got to use the technologies and informations and the intelligence that you have here around what's going on with your client, and to be able to synthesize all that with what your AI agent's telling you, your people are telling you, and all that data and all the information that it's going to be trying to bring it together. But in all those other pieces, there's still a lot of foundational learnings and frameworks that need to be built out within the banks to really make that
And
efficient.
do you see that, and do you see those patterns in what kind of areas that banks should invest in building their skill sets for people? Is it more AI? Is there any area that you would think is critical?
Yeah, I mean, definitely AI is, I mean, it's there, but how do you really, what are you going to learn in there? Is it agentic? Are you talking about how you design your prompts? What's the engineering, and how is that embedded into the sales teams? Is it in sales teams, or is it technology? I would argue say it should be sitting closer to the teams that really have the impact of the clients. What are they thinking? What's their use case that they're trying to go after? And what do they want to build within those agents to make a difference, right? And that changes the fundamental foundations of how we operate today. So I think it really needs to sit there and making sure we're all smart.
Interesting. Well, I think as you say, we are on a journey, and I think keep discovering as we proceed further. But I mean, that again comes, I bring it back to you, Srinath, and this is really about what it means to the operating model. I think there was a very interesting comment Daniel made about we are discovering what the new ways of banking is going to be, and new ways of bankers are going to be. What we do, what our customers expect, and what it means in the way we do things. So tell me, what are your thoughts on how the changing operating model is going to be, and how in what direction is the change happening now?
So I was just thinking back when I was hearing Daniel speak about how skills have to be developed with the big teams. I think with the tools that are now becoming available, yes, the organizations have to start developing newer types of muscles to use those tools effectively, right? And then I reflected back about 20 years ago, one of the organizations I was working with, we were in the collections business, check collections and clearing and so on and so forth. And it was always a challenge to see how can we do better for our customers, how can we make the entire process faster. And then you had the advent of mobile phones and mobile imaging technology come in. And the teams basically figured out, all right, I can use these devices now and capture the image of the check and sort of fast forward the whole process with your partner bank for the clearing. Now, that was pathbreaking at that time. So when I look at where we are today, I think in many ways it's not very different. The tools have changed, but what is needed is the ability to have that imagination. How do I use that tool to make a difference? At the end of the day, I still need to provide that service to my customer. Look at it this way. Many of these solutions that we offer to our clients, I think are fairly commoditized across banks. And I know this is a little sort of odd thing for me to say in this gathering, but if you really think about it, it is commoditized. What is it that differentiates one of them from another? Ultimately, it comes down to those 3 or 4 differentiating factors, whether it's customer service or whether it's providing that additional twist onto the offering which delights the client. And these are the tools that will enable you to figure out, okay, how do I use this to make the difference? I mean, if I look at the tools available from an engineering perspective within the technology groups for development, it is unbelievable the kind of productivity gains that one is seeing, because you no longer need to struggle through building code manually. And you have the tools which will give it. Of course, you still need to have the obligation of care to ensure that whatever code is generated is validated before it gets into production. But the point is, your entire cycle time is significantly short, right? It's fascinating. And there's another area where you see, on the operations side, using AI-based tools suddenly gives you a massive productivity and scale boost. that with that existing capacity that one has, you are able to probably start processing 2x or 3x the volumes. So suddenly you're operating in a completely different paradigm. Now, are there challenges which come along? Of course there are challenges. I mean, life is never that simple, right? I mean, you do have one gain, but there will be some associated risks that one has to sort of keep a lookout for and figure out, okay, how do I overcome that? So I think it's exciting. I think there is opportunity for all of us to figure out through natural curiosity, how do I utilize the tools that are now becoming available? But at the core, it has to be that fundamental desire to ensure that we give a better service offering, delight the clients, and ensure that the trust is still maintained.
I like the way you coined that phrase. I don't know if someone got it. You need to have the natural curiosity to figure artificial intelligence.
There's that for sure.
All right. Well, I'm going to open up to the audience for some questions, but before anyone poses a question, I'm going to have one question to both of you. You did mention, Srinath, that if you went back to the 90s and there was the image capturing on mobile, and that was the in thing then, and there is something which is in thing today. So now, what's the one thing that you would invest in today to be relevant in 2030?
I don't know, I mean, is there one thing? I think I would look at strengthening the capability to, I mean, let me narrow down a little bit, because otherwise it becomes too vast, okay? So if I'm talking about the payments business, for example, I think as we scale, as we start handling more and more millions of transactions per day, the ability to have an understanding of what we are processing for the client and ensuring that that transaction processing happens in a timely and secure manner so the client gets the benefit of the service offering. And I'm talking about this specifically because compared to maybe 5 or 10 years ago, volumes have jumped massive. So if you do not change the paradigm in which you service the client, you will actually get lost. I mean, if you're processing 10 million transactions a day, and if you're blind to what's the underlying purpose of the transaction, it's a very difficult challenge. And let me give an example, right? We all talk about payments as if it's one, mass, but it's not. There are flavors, there are variations. I mean, if I'm processing a payroll transaction, right, there is a very different element of care that is required. Why? Because the amounts cannot be huge at an individual level, but the emotional impact of a failed payroll transaction can be massive. Similarly, if I'm processing a tax payment, again, seems like a nominal amount to be paid on behalf of the client, but if that fails, the reputational damage is massive, right? If I'm processing a payment for a security settlement transaction, if that fails, the security trade fails in the market, look at the reputational damage on the client who is supposed to ensure that the transaction goes through. So I think these nuances are now coming in, saying if I'm processing this massive flow, how do I identify which ones are more sensitive, which ones require that additional level of care? So I think, to me, that's what I'll be looking for.
Very interesting. So your reference is that know what you're doing, keep the customer in focus, and any change that is being brought to make that experience better is what you would invest in.
So as we sort of nurture and grow these flow monsters, you also need to have the ability to be very granular in identifying where the additional care is.
More and more about less and less. Yeah, I like that. Daniel.
Let me expound off of that. Okay. Talking about transactions, flow, product. A lot of stuff's happening, trends. Back to your comment there, right? Where should we be investing in, I guess from an AI point of view, and how we look at what our jobs are day in, day out. Your jobs here in the room is this relationship management, right? Client. Right? You can look at the data that flows, whatever, great. That's one element of many different facets that you have in your product's toolbox. You want to use it that way. but so what? What are you gonna do with that? Again, it goes back to my early point, I keep on resonating, and I'm telling, my teams inside, my group is that you're only as powerful as what you have in your hand or in your mind around the intelligence and the insights that you need to have to drive the difference, back to your point on the client, the relationship and managing that and using that on the go. So I would say for each of you in the room investing in, like, where I would go is like, great, you've got all the tools, you've got to visualize, you have all this technology, you're laying AI over top of that, you're laying AI over top of this, you're doing this and that. Okay, well, there's not one AI app to rule them all, right? There never will be. But you got to be smart enough and savvy enough to understand what does that mean, the differences between what AI tool you're using versus what's giving you, synthesizing that in your own mind, or using another app maybe, I don't know. And then what is that really telling you, and do you really believe in it? And does it really, and then what does that insight and that value give either one? Because everything I just talked about, one, that's speed to market efficiencies that you not have 10 analysts working overnight doing. You got someone out there doing, an agent doing it, right? Great. Now you're one individual that have armies of information that's coming into you, and you've got so much of it. Now you've got to really educate yourself and be prepared for what's coming at you from an onslaught of information, making sure that you believe in that. And then how's that then translated into what does that mean for making a difference to your client in relation to what you're really delivering from what the bank can offer.
Yeah.
So you got to scale up and understand what that means to you, and to your teams, and to your juniors, and to your seniors, because your seniors, I don't know, because they're all Gen X and whatever. They're kind of getting onto it, but your young teams are out there. They're savvy. They get it. Like really empowering them and yourselves to really leverage that, and don't use it as a distractor or a competition. You got to be able to live with it, work with it, and use it in relation within the relations of yourselves and the teams, but also with the clients. So you really need to think about that and think, what is it that brings the value and insights, and use that to your greatest advantage to make a difference. Yeah.
Fascinating. So the Gen X and Gen Zs and millennials make up even in the corporate banking context. I love it. Thank you, Daniel and Srinath. Questions from the audience, please. So can someone pass a mic there?
If I'm audible, I can.
You will not be audible if you probably have. Thank you.
So, we've been talking about automation for a very long time. We started, I think, maybe 10 years ago with RPA, robotic process automation. And RPA failed. There was no real update. So what is it different this time around that you believe that agents will be more successful?
Is that too?
Srinath, you want to take that?
Okay, let me talk in two parts, right? RPA, I think at the point at which it took off, it worked, it made sense. But when technology evolved and there were newer solutions available, suddenly, you basically decided, okay, I've got something which will do the same job in a more efficient and cost-effective manner, and therefore I will migrate. I think it is the natural evolution that happens. And this is really the point which I want to make, is that your substrate of the technology layer which is there, that is a continuous evolving machine. In fact, what I want to bring out here is, if I look back 30 years ago, large organizations had the luxury to have a 5-year plan, invest in tech, and then sit back for the next 5 to 8 years and say, all right, we're done for now. You don't have that luxury today, right? The evolution of the underlying tech is so fast that you need to have a roadmap. The roadmap has to evolve every 6 months, and you need to keep investing continually in how you manage the technology evolution so your business keeps running. So the point is that it's very difficult to box everything into a solution and say, all right, this is it forever, and we don't need to do anything. I don't think we will have that. So what you see today is the agentic AI solutions. Is that going to be the same in 2 years? I don't know.
Happen, and that has profound impact on the broader teams today. So these are things that my service operations teams are grappling with. Is okay, how do we really retool ourselves? What's the proper outfit for the service operations teams in relation to how they understand the AI building, what I said earlier, bringing the agents closer to the users, because they know the use cases. They got to be able to develop it, and the managers of those teams have to be able to really script that out. So we're just now in the thrust of really defining that and really good at that, so it's still a journey, but it's putting the forefront of how I'm looking at that, because it changes my cost to serve profile, it changes the overall services of the client in its own right, and taking that global. Right, so.
Agent 007. All right, we'll need to draw the curtains on this panel, but the panelists will be available for any other questions you may have at the tea break, which is after the next panel discussion. So with that, gentlemen, thank you so much for a wonderful session.
Thank you.